Good evening, everybody. Welcome to John Patriot. We're going to have a word of prayer, so let's all stand together, and then we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, tonight. We thank you we could be in a room with people that are free, that understand and know what it is to be free. Lord, everything came from you, Lord, and we thank you. All our freedoms, our rights, they came from you, so they can't take them away from us. And we won't let them. And we thank you, Lord, tonight that we have such good men that are going to stand before us and just help us to understand how the process works. So we ask you to open up our understanding. And tonight, Lord, we pray for Lyle, that, Lord, you'll heal him of the flu and others that are suffering with it. And, Lord, protect us from it, we pray. Lord, we know you do that, and we thank you for your tender mercies. And, Lord, we thank you for this meeting again tonight and each person here. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We have a legislative session coming up, and so I have asked John Baer to share the House side, and then Troy McKeown is going to share about the Senate side. I almost forgot what the other House was. But anyway, John's got some good stuff up here on the screen, so give him your undivided attention.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm really excited to share with you guys what's going on. First of all, I kind of want to give a little bit of an overview. The upcoming session is called a budget session. And so in the Constitution, we're allowed 60 days over any 2-year term. 60 days over. So anyway, this is called the budget session. And we get 60 days over any 2-year term. And so we only have 20 days left after the special session to conduct this session. And there are two major things that have to happen in this session. One is the budget, thus the name. The other is we're coming out of the 2020 census, so we have to do redistricting. So those two things are mandatory that we get accomplished. And if you take that 20 days, you have to split it in half because things will be happening in the Senate and things will be happening in the House. And after halfway through, all those things have to cross over to the other side so they have time to go through both houses. So we really only have 10 days to get anything that's going to get all the way through and has the potential of being signed by the governor. So every bill has, based on the Constitution, has to have 3 days to be heard 3 different times. Once is the first reading, second reading, and then third reading. We vote on the first reading, we vote on the third reading, and amendments can be brought during each of those times. So there's lots of votes going on, and everything has to have 3 days. So if you only have 10 days to get it done, and each bill has to have 3 days, you can see the time crunch there. So now it comes down to the different types of bills. The budget bill always originates in the House. And I've got a list of the bills that are on right now on the website that you can go and look at. And you'll notice it starts with House Bill number 2. That's because the budget is always House Bill number 1. And it has not been drafted yet. That's done by the Appropriations Committee. And currently they're hearing from all of the different departments of the state to determine what the budget should look like. The governor has already submitted his budget to us. And so that will be drafted, and that will be the first order of business is to work on that. The other types of bills will be, there will be a bill that will come out of the Corporations and Elections Committee, and that will be for the redistricting. There was recently a meeting in the Rules Committee, and they determined that that is likely to start in the Senate. So the redistricting bill will start in the Senate. I'll try to give you a little bit of information about the redistricting, and I'll try to keep that more local, because if you're concerned about redistricting, that's where you should be paying attention to. Then the third thing is both committee bills and personal bills. committee bills have been being worked on throughout this interim since the last session, and personal bills are being drafted and submitted. So here's what happens next. When we get there, because of the crunch in time and the importance of getting the budget through and the redistricting through, every other bill, whether it's a committee bill or a personal bill, has to pass a 2/3 introduction vote. So in other words, if you bring a bill this session, 2/3 of the House or 2/3 of the Senate, wherever it's starting, has to pass that we can even look at that. If it passes that 2/3, then it will go to a committee. It'll be assigned to a committee. It'll spend a day, hopefully, in that committee, depending on what the schedule is for that committee. And if it passes the committee vote on a majority vote of the committee, then it will come back to the floor and begin that 3-day process. And depending on how many bills are ahead of it, it may not even get to that opportunity. So you can imagine that the number of bills, and there's only a few up there right now. I think there's about 50 per house. But I know that even my committee, the Minerals and Businesses and Economic Development Committee, we haven't even got our bills up there yet because we have one more meeting to vote on those first. Mark, you had a question?
Is that time crunch for the budget session mandated by old?
The Constitution.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah. And part of that, to help you understand, we are a citizen legislature. And that is good for you all. That the idea is we don't have professional politicians going down there and spending all their time in Cheyenne, getting paid to do it, and then seeing no one but the lobbyists coming back here every now and then just to garner your votes. So it's good that it's your neighbors that are going to go down there and represent you. It is bad that we have a short period of time and everybody wants to pass. Like last session, we had over 600 bills in 40 days. So it's nearly impossible to get through it and really give a bill the time it deserves to do that. But the idea is that we're keeping it a citizen legislature, and that's why we only go down there for a certain amount of time. I think that's good, but we are moving more and more towards having a professional legislature, and we should fight that tooth and nail as far as we can, because it needs to be of the people, for the people. Great question, though. Okay, so I want to share with you how to get to this, this page that I'm looking at, and so we'll start with that. I'm going to back up. This is the legislative website, and if we go home, if you just look up the Wyoming Legislature, you will get to this web page, and you'll see this come up right here, this screen. You'll notice down below this picture there are 3 little dots. And those are pretty important because these things over here to the left are really the most commonly visited things. In fact, all your redistricting is found on this middle dot, if you will. So when we get to redistricting, we'll look at that. But down below here, you can look up your senators, your representative. You can find them based on your address, and you can look at former members here. If you're going to watch a legislative meeting, that's over here under calendars. And so you would, I'll show you at the end if we have a little bit of time. I want to make sure we get plenty of time for Troy to talk about the Senate, but I'd like to show you how to go in here and register so that you can testify from your own home. Because we now do things electronically and over Zoom, you don't have to travel to Cheyenne to have input during the committee meetings. And remember, committees is where the bill goes after it's been introduced. It'll go to the committee and then receive debate and public input at that time. And I will tell you that that always happens during the day on a weekday. And therefore, we get very little public input. Mostly we hear from lobbyists. And that's very unfortunate because that means the lobbyists are having the most influence on the legislators in those committees. So because you are all working folk, you know, and you're working at those times, you don't necessarily aren't able to do that, especially go down to Cheyenne and be seen there. But now that we're doing it this way, if you can get a couple hours off, I'm going to hopefully show you how to register and then just go on a Zoom meeting and you can share your heart about a particular issue. There are limits. We obviously have a limited amount of time to hear testimony, so you want to get in and get in early and be prepared with whatever it is you want to share. Yes, ma'am.
So you said to send in comments. Can you do that anytime?
You can do that as well, and that's on that same place.
Okay, but it
So
can
we'll
be
drill.
before the meeting?
I'm sorry?
Can it be before the meeting?
Yes.
Or does it have to be
You
during?
definitely want it to be before the meeting if you're submitting written comments.
Okay.
Unfortunately, legislators, we're like anybody else. We don't read as much as we listen. So it's much more impactful if you can actually go on and testify in front of them. And in fact, I just mentioned you can do it online. It's even more impactful if you can be in front of them live in Cheyenne. But we all understand that's not always possible. Okay, so great question there too. All right, so the bills that are available right now, you can see under legislation, here are the 2022 budget session bills. And so I click on that and it brings up that list that I showed you. And so here's the ones that have been put on the list so far. So these are all the bills that would be introduced. And they may not get introduced. Some of them die right there on that list. It's really up to in the House, it's up to the Speaker of the House and the Majority Floor Leader whether those bills leave this spot and get that introduction vote of 2/3. And then it's up to the body to vote the 2/3. Then it's also back to the Speaker to determine what committee is going to hear that bill. It's usually based on what the bill's subject is about. There are 9 different committees and they're on various different subjects. So it would typically get sent to a committee that was appropriate for that subject. Not always. Sometimes politics are played, as you can imagine, and a particular committee is probably stacked more liberal or more conservative, depending on how the Speaker set up that committee. He determines who's going on what committee. And if he wants to kill a bill in committee, rather than do it himself, he can do that. He can send it to a committee where it may not even get heard, or the vote will kill it there. If he wants to make sure it goes through, he can send it to a committee that he knows will be friendly to that. I will tell you that the Labor and Health Committee on the House side has been the most friendly to pro-life stuff this last year. We passed 8 bills, but we got a lot more than that out of, pro-life bills. We got more than that out of the committee. And in fact, one bill made it all the way through the Senate. This is prohibiting chemical abortifacients. Made it to the House, and the Speaker of the House did not allow it to be introduced. Then the Freedom Caucus in the House moved to oppose the Speaker and bring it out anyway. And we lost on a 22-38 vote. So 38 representatives in the Wyoming House of Representatives voted against hearing that bill to prohibit chemical abortions. So that's kind of what we're up against. And you need to understand, for the things that you hear tonight from myself and from Troy that you don't like, the bottom line is we have to change butts and seats. That's really what it comes down to. And each of you can play a role in that. And if you want to know how to do that, contact me, and I can tell you how to get plugged into changing what the legislature looks like. Okay, so the budget bill, I just want to mention a couple of things about the budget. The governor has submitted his budget, and his comments are, I'm holding the line, and he has submitted a budget that is very similar to what we passed in the last session, which is a 25% reduction from the budget that was passed in 2020. So that's a good thing, right? You hardly ever see the Wyoming government shrinking in size, or at least expenditures. Now, understand that the budget that we passed cut 25% out of the previous budget, but we didn't get rid of any employees. And remember, Wyoming has the largest number of state employees to population of any nation or any state in the nation by a factor of 25% over number 2. We have 800 employees for every 10,000. You might think, well, we're spread out. Wyoming needs a few more because of that. The number 2 state is Alaska, and they have 600 per 10,000. The national average is 400 employees, state employees, per 10,000. So we're way up there. And the governor has cut jobs through that whole time. But of all those jobs, we've only actually terminated 137 state employees over the last year. So we still have a long ways to go to start reducing government. Here's the reality though, I'll just give you an illustration. The Wyoming Business Council, they're tasked with creating economic development. They're the outfit that was tasked with putting the CARES Act money out into businesses and individuals when that came to the state. So they're all about economic development. And they brought a budget to the governor asking not for 100% of the original budget or less. They asked for 5 times their budget, 400% increase. And the governor said, well, I held the line. He doubled their budget, okay? Personally, I don't think that the government has any business in economic development. That's really the private sector's job. All government needs to do is reduce regulation and get out of the way and let the people do it. That's what President Trump was a master at. He reduced regulations and the economy took off. I believe that's a great model that we should be following, and we shouldn't be dumping your money into government to try to create more business. So that's what we're up against. And I can tell you that with the price of coal going up, there's going to be more revenue coming into the state, and we will hear from lots of our colleagues that there's lots of money. You don't need to hold the line. We can spend a little bit more here, a little bit more there, and the House Freedom Caucus has 17 to 18 members, and so out of a vote of 60, you have to have 31 to win on those fights. We will go fight, and we will bring amendments to try to hold the line on the budget. But we're really up against it because the governor's doubled some of these things while he's telling the people that he's holding the line. And, you know, there's a lot of liberal rhino legislators that are just going to want to spend, spend, spend. And that's the problem. We just keep growing this Wyoming government bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, when coal and oil and gas revenues drop, who's going to have to pay for all that? You and I. They'll try to bring an income tax. There were 15 bills to increase taxes in the Revenue Committee over the interim. 15. And I'm going to show you one of them right here is the increase in the fuel tax. It's House Bill 14. So I'm going to just show you how to look at these. So you click on the bill, and it's going to bring up the bill, which you can see here. And I know it's kind of small up there, but I'll read the important stuff to you when we get to it. You can, over here on the right, these are PDF versions, so if you wanted to download one and print it, you click on these here. This says introduced. That's how it came to the House. Later on, if it passes, there will be later versions that will have amendments already brought in. The one that is the most complete would be the engrossed. So if you can remember, engrossed on bills that have passed and then been engrossed into statute, that's going to be the latest version. That's what's going to be written into our state statutes. An interesting one over here is your fiscal note. And I'll just click on that just so you can kind of see it. And here it says that they believe in fiscal year 2023 that they will raise $22.5 million from the tax, the increased fuel tax. And then in 24, it'll double to 44, almost 45 million. And then by the third year, 2025, they believe it's going to be almost $70 million from this fuel tax. Mind you, they're also pushing electric cars at the same time. Oh, how do I wake it up? Yep, my screen's on. All right, I'm just going to, while you mess with that, I'm going to scroll down here and just read to you. The way this tax is set up, in the first year, in 2023, it's going to go to 23, now I'm quiet.
Now I get rid of you.
28 cents per gallon in 2023. On top of whatever you're paying now, there's another 28 cents. And then on July 1st of 2023 and ending in 2024, it'll be 33 cents. And then the third and final grade is after June 30th of 2024, it goes to 38 cents per gallon. So that's where you see those increases in their projected revenues. So think about that, that's 38 cents per gallon on top of what you see at the gas pump right now. These people are clearly not in touch with what you and I are having to do when we go to the gas pump. You know, the Biden administration.
This bill.
This one has come out of the Revenue Committee. So the sponsor is the committee. And by the way, bills that come out of the committee have about a 67% chance of passing. Individual bills are about 40% at best. So the idea is when a legislature goes to vote on a bill, if he hasn't researched it himself, which many don't, remember 600 bills, 30 days, 40 days, it's tough to do that very well. So they will depend on their colleagues that are in a committee to have vetted that bill very well. And they think, well, if it passed that committee, then it's probably okay. So unfortunately, this is how it happens a lot. And so you can imagine why Nancy Pelosi thinks she can say, you have to pass it to read it. Same kind of thing happens in Cheyenne. So some of us spend our nights reading those bills. And we can't read all 600, so we wait to see what's going to be introduced the next day that we're actually going to vote on. And then it's about 20 bills a day. Yes, ma'am.
So is there a way to limit the amount of bills that get?
Yeah, you got to change the butts in the seats. Get some conservatives that understand when the legislature is passing a bill, it's generally not increasing your liberty. You know, that's how you do it. I can tell you that if the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, House Freedom Caucus gains power, our #1 plan, if we have the speakership, is to make a rule that if you bring a bill like these, you have to bring 2 repealers. So you have to get rid of 2 old laws before you can create a new law. And so that's the kind of behavior, but you will not get that from liberal rhinos. And we have a supermajority of Republicans, but unfortunately, they are not sticking to the Republican Party platform, which says we want small government. Okay? Hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
With a lot of vitriol. Okay. Any questions about the budget piece? That's going to be a big fight. And with the 18 votes, sometimes 20 votes, we really have thrown a wrench into the leadership's and the establishment's game plan. And so when it came to the bill for education funding, which we did not pass a bill, they tried 3 times to caucus us together and convince us to vote with them. They knew that if they had a tax increase in there, we wouldn't vote for it. They couldn't stand to send it to the Senate without a 1-cent sales tax increase. So they ended up voting with the Democrats to get that out. And we all voted against it. So that's the kind of stuff we're up against. The Senate did their job and said, no, you're not going to get a 1% sales tax increase. But unfortunately, the fight was at that point so intense that we got nothing out. So we did not cut K through 12 education, even though the state itself had cut 25%. The K through 12 wasn't touched during that time. Anyway, that's how you look at a bill and read it yourself. You can print it out. The stuff that's in red is what's being added. The stuff that's in blue is what's being removed. And the stuff that's in black is the stuff that's already in statute. So you can kind of get an idea what's being spoken about when this is being done. But you'd have to go to the actual statute, which these numbers here will tell you where to go, if you wanted to see what the rest of the context would be for that bill. Wyoming is pretty good. It's not like DC in that they can say the Affordable Care Act and write a bill that is nothing at all affordable. In Wyoming, that title, that catch title, has to be really what the bill is about. And we only get one subject per bill. So they can't have these big omnibus bills. Now, the budget bill covers the whole budget. K through 12 education is a different bill, and we'll have to fight about that at the same time. And that is probably a bigger fight, just like it was in the last session. So, any questions about the budget bill and about these bills? I went pretty fast over that. Again, you find that here under the legislation for 2022 down at the bottom of the website. Okay, so I talked about committee bills, personal bills. budget bill, the K through 12. The only other thing I want to talk about is redistricting. This particular map is the most recent map that your county clerk has drawn up to submit to the Corporations Committee, which is meeting on Wednesday. All of the legislators are approving of this to this point. I would tell you that we would prefer that this green section, where's that one at? We originally agreed with the county commissioners that Campbell County should have 5 representatives inside the borders of Campbell County. The Corporations Committee has said, no, we want Weston to be whole. And so for that to happen, the black lines there, by the way, are the current lines. Weston is currently cut in half and has been for 20 years. For Weston to be whole, we can't be whole. So now, this little portion right here is being given to House District 1 in Crook County. There's about, I want to say, 2,000 people in this area. And so they will be a minority because there's 7,800 people over here. This is Bill Fortner's district right here. It's been reduced by a chunk, obviously, right here. And then he has gained people from my district and from Tim Hallinan's district in town because we have grown significantly. This yellow area is House District number 3, which is Eric Barlow's currently. And this is pretty much a picture of what it is now. So a good chunk of that is down in Converse County. But we have the majority here. It's about 2-to-1 votes. So we generally elect the person that represents this area right here. And so the committee has said that this is what they'd like to see us do. I'm going to zoom in so you can see the city for those of you who live in the city. Again, the colors are the proposal and the black lines are the current areas. So, my House district is 31, and it is this black line right here, and this goes way down south of town along Highway 59. Right here is 59, and I have the stuff on the east side. There's very few houses down here. This is Antelope Valley. Right here you have Sleepy Hollow, and this line cuts right through it. So currently, Bill Fortner has half of Sleepy Hollow, and I have the other half. So that's what you call gerrymandering. At one point, there was somebody that lived in Sleepy Hollow, and they wanted those two people to be in different districts, so they drew a line right through Sleepy Hollow. This is I-90 right here, and I live right here in Collins Heights. Now, my district, instead of being this thing that goes like this, is turning into this purple area here. Very few people live out here. I don't really have a problem. Their vote counts less if they have one rep and another area has a rep and they have fewer voters. Those fewer voters have a bigger say. So in an effort to make everybody equal, I had to get people up and Bill Fortner had to gain people. And then I gave up this area down here, which doesn't have a lot of people in it, over to House District 3. This black line here is Dr. Hallinan's current district, and he had to give up this area. He did gain a little bit right here. There's not much in there. This is Southern Drive right here. So that's just south of Southern Drive. Oh, I'm sorry, it goes right across there. This is Remington Estates right there. This is Chris Knapp, or Roy Edwards' old district, right there. And he gained some of mine as well, but he was short on people. That's the downtown area right in here. And then the Senate districts, usually, that may change this time, the Senate districts just take 2 House districts. So currently, Troy has Dr. Hallinan's and Chris Knapp's, these 2 right here. My district is coupled with Eric Barlow's, and we have Jeff Wasserberger. And then Bill Fortner is coupled with House District 1, which is Chip Nyman over in Crook County, and they have Ogden Driscoll. Any questions about redistricting?
You feel like it's fair?
There's going to be a ton of questions. I'll get as much as I can done.
Why don't you just do Campbell County as a whole and present it that way?
So-
and represent everybody in Campbell County instead of this gerrymandering districting, because you just made a comment that kind of stuck out, John, that you said, there's not too many people up in this area here. However, I don't mind representing them. How about representing all Campbell County?
Well, we do.
Well,
We do as a
I
coalition,
understand that,
we go
but-
down there to represent.
What-
But here's the problem. Eric Barlow was seen in the paper, he announced in the paper that he was gonna do exactly that.
Yep.
5 reps. We have the people for 5 reps. We have enough for 4.9, so that 1/10 of a representative, we can overcome that, because you get a little bit of slack as you do this, because it can't be perfect everywhere. So we could have 5 reps in here. The Speaker of the House went to fight for that. But Ogden Driscoll, and I believe it has to do with him trying to get reelected, he currently represents this area here in Weston County. And he has promised Weston County that they would be whole. And I believe he probably thinks that that would get him reelected if he's successful at that. Well, he is the chairman of that committee on the Senate side, and so far he's beating Eric Barlow. Eric Barlow presented just what you suggested. We all supported that, and he really stacked that committee with a lot of liberal members that would do what he told them to do. And yet on the Senate side, somehow Driscoll has managed at this point to get victory as far as Weston being whole. And by the way, Weston being whole has created a problem where we're cut up 3 ways, sharing with Crook and sharing with Converse. But also Goshen is forced to be split up 3 ways, just so that Weston could be whole. So there's a lot of fallout from this plan as it sits right now.
Just, John, call him out, because Barlow says that he's all for Campbell County being whole. He's not.
Yeah, I
Because
don't
they're meeting
know.
that night with Wasserberger, with Driscoll, and Barlow, and I don't know if you were part of that, in Nyman. Just call them out on it. Let's just say, hey,
Well,
Sounds like it's conflict of interest is what it is.
there are a lot of, let me back up a little bit and talk about redistricting. Redistricting is required by Congress, by our United States Constitution to happen every 10 years. And gerrymandering and politicking happens every 10 years, all the way back to the founding of our country. And unfortunately, it's going to happen. The alternative is that your elected officials don't get to choose. And if your elected officials don't get to choose, that means that somebody unelected gets to pick how these lines are drawn. And you don't want that. So the bickering and the fighting that goes on, it happens every 10 years. It has since the beginning of the country, and it will continue. The problem is who's really in power. And that's what Paul is bringing up, is the fact that Driscoll and Barlow are in positions of power, and they are not conservative. And just as an illustration, these districts right here in town, Eric Barlow had drawn them up to follow the wards, and if you think that our city council is somewhat liberal, the idea would be that they would elect more liberal representatives. In fact, just to give you an example, he forced me into the same district as Troy, so he and I we couldn't both be in the Senate at the same time. He put myself and Bill Fortner in the same district at times, and Chip Nyman, we were forced into this. We have been fighting this for months now, okay? Thus far, this end result where we're at right now, we're actually in pretty good shape as far as conservatives not being forced together into the same district. That's really the big concern, and that's what they're probably going to want to do. My suspicion is that Eric Barlow will wait until this is out on the House floor, and then he'll bring an amendment to get it to be 5 whole. But if we're not careful, that amendment will also put 2 or 3 of your currently conservative representatives all into one district, so you'll only be able to elect 1 of those 3. So that's the kind of gamesmanship that goes on. There's a question over here, and I'll come back to you. Somebody had their hand up over here. Oh, Patty.
I was just gonna make a comment that I've been, can I use
Yep.
it? That I've been attending these
Yeah.
meetings, and they do not listen to the public at all. And they have even cut the public comment. That's kind of similar to our county commissioners at one of the meetings. So it isn't a fight that we can win. They have it stacked. There is not one conservative on, what are there, 15 people on that,
There's
in
12.
that committee? It's unbelievable.
What should be brought up, John, is that when Barlow sat there and said, okay, we have to get it in by the 14th to the county commissioner, or not commissioners, but the Susan Saunders to draw up the maps and to submit them by the 14th. Barlow was sitting there that day and went on the next committee meeting, for the corporation's committee meeting, and said, and lied to the people and said that we didn't have enough time, we didn't get the maps in time that Troy, you, everybody worked on, but nobody called them out on it. And it was just,
Let me explain.
we watched those.
Let me explain my strategy, because you're right, you're absolutely right. I watched that meeting too, and I was prepared to testify on behalf of our plan.
Right.
But I watched the meeting, and I watched one of my colleagues, Chuck Gray, try to fight for the exact same thing that we were fighting for within Natrona or Casper. And the response that he got made it real clear to me, we were going nowhere in that committee. So the strategy I used, I said, we're going to wait until it comes back to Campbell County, and we're going to do it in front of the commissioners and in front of the people, and we're going to vote on it, and that's what we did. And Eric and Ogden both left the meeting early and didn't participate in the vote. But that plan is pretty similar to what is in this plan here, other than we've been overridden about giving up this area here and gaining this area here, also that Weston can be whole. Fight's not over. The fight is not over. The Wyoming Freedom Caucus is going to develop a plan that works with senators to try to get something through that protects all those conservatives throughout the state. We have Clarence Stivar, one of the most conservative voters in the House, is being combined with Jim Blackburn, who's a fairly conservative voter himself. So those two in Laramie County, south side of Cheyenne, are being drawn into the same district. Representative Jennings, who's the leader of the Wyoming House Freedom Caucus, is losing 450 very conservative voters out of his district and gaining from somewhere else. So there's a swap that's not necessary, and that swap is putting his job in jeopardy, his ability to be reelected. He usually wins by about 450 votes. So that's the kind of thing we're up against. If I were you, I would focus on what's happening on these maps that our county clerks are submitting, and look at your own house, see who you'd be represented by. Call me if you have questions. I'll be happy to share with you what's happening and how it's going to affect you personally.
And what can we do?
What can you do?
What are the steps that we can do?
The best thing to do would be to contact our representative on that committee at this point, because everything's in committee right now, and that is Ogden Driscoll. Ogden Driscoll represents these three counties as far as that committee is concerned. And so all of us need to let Ogden Driscoll know what we think. It won't change his mind. He's dead set, and he's next in line to be the president of the Senate. His heart's set on it, and I think Troy can speak to this, but I think he'd do just about anything to get it. And that means he probably won't pay attention to us. And if you look back historically, in the last election in 2018, he represented this area of Campbell County, and he lost. He lost in that election. And he won by enough in this area to get into office. Again, using a three-way race, much like Liz Cheney's hoping for and the governor's hoping for. So those facts are why that committee killed Chip Nyman's bills for a runoff bill and for a no crossover, so that Democrats couldn't register the day of election as Republicans, vote in the Republican primary, and then the next day change back to be a Democrat. Those efforts have been underway for a decade, supported by the Republican Party here in Wyoming, and this committee, the Corporations Committee, and this legislature, which is, again, a supermajority of Republicans, has stymied that effort every year. So, does that answer
Oh, yeah.
what we're up against? I think that the strategy has worked so far because that map that was up there is acceptable in that we're not hurting conservative representation. There are some things that some people that could be running for the Senate position in the future that, you know, they're probably strategically working against them. I guarantee you that the lines that are drawn on there are going to be helpful for the Frontier Republicans. Okay, they're looking at who they want to run against me, against Troy. Well, Troy's not up for election this time, but against Bill Fortner, against Dr. Hallinan, against Chris Knapp. They're looking at people and they're making sure they're inside the lines.
Are
Okay?
you all three looking at re-election?
Yes. Yeah. Dr. Hallinan has assured me he wants to run for office again. I'm just learning. I'm just getting now where I know what's going on. I better get back in there where I can do something. Okay? And yeah, Chris Knapp, same thing. Bill Fortner has toyed with running for the Senate, but obviously this plays a part in what he could do in that regard. But the last thing he told me, he intends to stay in the House. He's gonna go to the Senate with me dragging and kicking to keep him from it because we need him in the House. He's a great voter and we need him in the House. That 20 votes I was talking about that's really frustrating leadership, Bill Fortner's one of those. Chris Knapp is one of those. Tim Hallinan is one of those. I'm one of those. Your other representative, Eric Barlow, is not one of those. Okay. Yes, sir. Yep, that's everything I was going to show you. I was going to show you how to go online and testify. Maybe that's for another day. Okay.
Off
Sure.
topic and real quick, do we have a governor run? Is there anybody that stepped up to run for governor?
Great question. Who's running for governor? There are names that are talking about it. The problem is that the governor has about $2 billion coming from Biden that he is handing out to who he wants to have that money. And then they're going to get this big influx of ARPA and CARES Act funds, which is going to free up their money to support his campaign. So somebody like Harriet Hageman that would like to be governor has shied away from that and is now running against Liz Cheney because she sees the writing on the wall that, you know, going up against $2 billion is a pretty tough campaign.
Is she, how do you personally feel about her running for the Senate seat for the?
I know her personally and I think she's highly qualified for that. The most qualified person that has
You
been
have
in the
trust
race so
in her?
far. I'm sorry?
Do you have trust in her?
I do. I don't think she's as conservative as I am, but, you know, I wouldn't send my worst enemy to Washington DC, to be honest. I do think she's very principled, and I think she knows the game, and I think she can fight. She knows what's best for Wyoming way better than Liz Cheney does, and I think she's a fighter. You know, I would say that Anthony Bouchard is a fighter too. But sometimes he doesn't fight the right people, so.
He kind of reminds me of Trump. You kind of
Yeah.
like what he does, but
Trump's
he's
a
got
better
mouth.
businessman.
He's got a mouth.
Yeah. I don't want to say any more. I'm friends with both, so.
Troy, your turn.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, John.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I hope everybody had a good Christmas and New Year's starting out well.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm gonna take just a couple seconds here before Troy gets started. I have a couple things for Troy to take with him to Cheyenne, to props, if you will, display on his desk or use however he thinks might be best. Remember the more modern one.
Remember,
Remember the fifth rib.
Now we expect great things.
That's very touching. Thank you. Okay, I'll try to be quick. It's starting to get a little later. I'm gonna cover some bigger rocks that we'll be looking at in the next session and the session to follow. And some of the things that John was talking about, following it as it goes. We killed Medicaid expansion. And he talked about how they send it to another committee. So they took a health and labor bill and sent it to revenue. The revenue committee is everybody who loves taxes, and they built it that way. So we're gonna see Medicaid expansion probably every year until I'm gone at least. They're not gonna give that up.
Can you share with me why?
Why they're not gonna give up Medicaid expansion?
Well, why would somebody who's all for K through 12 getting all the state money, why would they vote for it? Like Harshman?
It's just more money,
Well,
it's more taxes.
let me add something. Because I think this is a hugely important point. They're bringing it back year after year. This has been fought and lost for 10 years up till we got there. And now all of a sudden, it passed the House this last year on a 38 to 22 vote and went to the Senate. So things are changing and they're trying to get, and many of those 38 that voted for it understand that, or at least have always strategized to get every dime into K-12 education, no matter what it did to the state. Well, Medicaid expansion destroys state after state after state in their financing. And right now, Biden is offering a 90-10 match, right?
Yes.
That 90-10 match goes away after 2 years. And what they're saying is that, well, if they take it away, we'll just kill the program. You think any of the state legislators will take away free health care?
Exactly.
My point is that they're trying to kill our finances so that they tax you. They're gonna put an income tax in place. Sorry.
Thanks, John.
It sounds like what the,
String back there again.
sounds like what the drug dealers do. They sell it to you cheap and then they jack up the price.
Well, Montana right now, on their Medicaid expansion, are coming up with new and wonderful ways to tax you. Because it's kind of like the Hotel California. Once you check in, you're not getting out. And then it's gonna drop to a 50-50, maybe even a 30-70, and you're gonna be stuck. And then you go to the, and I'm gonna sound heartless right now, but I do not believe there's 25,000 people in Wyoming who can't find affordable health care. And that's what they're saying.
None of us can find affordable.
We pay astronomical amounts of money. I just had a hospital bill, 5 hours in the emergency room, and my bills are astronomical and none of it's covered under my insurance. We're paying astronomical for, and you can't get on in the Wyoming exchange. The people who are subsidized, it's at a price that they can afford, but the average person that works.
That's right where I was headed. You think it's astronomical now? When you put an additional 25,000 people on free health care, anybody who can afford health care is going to be paying even more and more and more. And to qualify, you got to be at the 125% poverty level. So they just keep expanding it. And I think John said it best, government needs to get out of insurance. But that will be catastrophic if it ever gets through. And as John pointed out, every year we vote on it, it seems to get a little closer and a little closer.
What was the vote in the Senate?
The Senate was 2010. The Senate pretty much crushed it. But that's coming up. John talked about the fuel tax. Fuel tax that they're structuring right now is 5 cents per year for the next 3 years as an increase. The Build Back Better America has a federal road usage charge tied to it. You remember when we talked about the rock during my election, where Wyoming was going to take 3 or 4 cents per mile? Well, the federal government wants 8.3 cents per mile. So if you drive a fossil fuel powered vehicle, they're gonna bleed you to death, and then they're gonna subsidize electric cars. Well, as I look at it, Elon Musk has already come out and said, if all of us went and bought an electric car tomorrow, it would take the whole grid down. It can't be supported. Yeah, we're working on legislation to bring electric cars in and autonomous vehicles
More coal-fired power.
to generate electricity. It's a thought.
And I believe if they only travel, you can only travel 300 miles at a time. I think there's a limit, because my husband's in transportation and he was giving me the statistics, and it's insanity. We're spread out, you know, when you look at states like this that are spread out, yeah, we're gonna have a little pit stop in the middle of them.
What they have right now and what I've seen in the transportation committee, almost all of them go about 300 miles. But if you're willing to spend anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000, you can go 500 miles
Ooh.
for that vehicle. Well, the problem is, you get to the end of that road, you gotta plug it in. And it takes a while to charge it. And well, what's the company name that's down here at the hotel?
Hampton Inn.
Hampton Inn, yeah, but what's the charger called?
Tesla.
Tesla. Tesla's chargers will charge, guess what? Teslas and Teslas only. So it's gonna turn into that.
But also, electric cars don't work really well in the cold weather. That's really hard on batteries.
Look what happened in DC on the interstate. If you were in an electric car for 19 hours at below zero temperature, people probably would have started dying, or at least severe frostbite. So we're kind of back to the, I'm going to jump around real quick because I want to be quick. We're back to our stance on the jab too, the vaccination. If you want to drive an electric car, you should be able to drive an electric car. I'm not against electric cars.
But don't force me to do it.
And don't subsidize it. Don't make it unfair.
Have you seen the Chargers in Smith's parking lot? They got 4 of them there.
Yeah.
They still aren't hooked up, but
Is that what those are?
Yeah.
When's down gonna get chargers?
We're gonna install gas pumps. So it kind of, the whole religious freedom thing, and as you're watching the Supreme Court look at vaccine mandates, I don't think anybody knows if the Supreme Court's trying to make it illegal or legal. What are they trying to do with it? So that's going to be kind of scary. We've got a bill that will take the ability away from superintendents and school administrators to require vaccines. And so eventually, if they get away with this, they're going to say your kids have to have a COVID vaccine to come to school here. And yet, as we look at the data and the empirical evidence, people who've had 3 shots are still getting COVID. I mean,
But they're saving you, Troy.
they are.
Pennies from heaven.
I had a good argument on the Senate floor with another senator who stood up and said, your kid needs to be vaccinated and masked up to protect my child. Well, if the vaccine works and you believe in all this hocus pocus, why would my child be a threat to yours? My child's a threat, you're at a threat, yours isn't. You have the magic stuff put in your arm. And if you look at all of the Spanish flu and everything that's happened in this country over the years, this isn't even a blip. This is just
blip.
a bad flu.
It's not, it's a biological weapon. And it was manipulated on purpose. So it does affect the body differently. So that's my feeling.
It's also
And
a
I'm
sociological-
anti-vaccinate,
It's also a sociological experiment to see how much they can make us do.
I agree with both of you. But I don't think it had near the power or strength they wanted it to.
No.
I think they failed. But I do agree it was weaponized and brought over on purpose. So I wouldn't argue that with you. Let's see, what else fun stuff coming up? Corporate income tax. That is the beginning of getting a state income tax in place. First, we lull you and make you believe that only Walmart and Albertsons and Smiths and big corporations are gonna pay those taxes.
Well, even if they do limit it to corporations, where do the corporations get the money? They get it from us.
Most of the small businesses in this town are probably organized as a corporation also. So they would hit us too. We're already having problems with our tax liabilities, or I am anyway. So we're looking at that, but they lull you into that. They make you believe that it's not gonna cost any money. Walmart's just gonna pay it.
We are.
Because, you know, Walmart won't raise their prices. I had a friend today call me from Cheyenne to tell me he went to buy jalapenos and they were 63 cents a piece. I don't know how many people eat jalapenos in here regularly, but I'm gonna tell you, that's expensive. And it's all starting. I think the good news is, we have been fortunate being a smaller store, and we're part of a co-op, we're a little more agile. We own our own warehouse, we own our own trucking. So we really, if you need anything, and this is a terrible plug, but
We need to support our businesses. We really do.
we're getting groceries in. We have milk and bread and meat. Talking to a guy who's starting a slaughter plant, well, a packing plant. And so we're gonna try to work with him to make sure we can backfill. And I'm gonna still keep fighting the USDA thing. I think I should be able to cut locally fed grass beef.
Yes.
And I think I should be able to tell you, if you buy locally fed grass beef, maybe you're at risk. But you gotta ask yourself this other question. If I owned the cows and you want to buy it from me,
Because it's
out
not
out in the field,
processed away from long distance mixed with other things, and you can get fresher and control the quality and the nutrition.
we can just bring a carcass in and go to town. Put it on the shelf. Put a sticker that says, this is not USDA approved.
Wyoming approved.
The CDC likes it today. So that's kind of, like I said, I was gonna be very quick and brief, so we can keep you here all night long. I would open it up for any questions real quick.
How are the committees selected? All of the legislative committees?
I'm pretty sure it's with tarot cards. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
I showed up initially, and I was supposed to be on wildlife and recreation. Well, the president of the Senate knew there was gonna be some abortion bills come up. And he had a tie vote on health and labor, and he supports that, so I got put on that committee. And then transportation and military affairs.
Because I noticed when I went through and looked at all the committees and who was on them, there are some people who are on a ton of committees, like Karen Netticott and Wanitzer and whatever, they're on committee after committee after committee.
Well, we have committees, and we have special committees. We have blue ribbon panels. I'm making fun of the blue ribbon panel, but they'll form a special committee. And they'll put exactly who they want on it to get the result they're gonna get. Which goes back to the next election cycle. If we could pull off what we did last time one more time, we would be armored against any gerrymandering. Because there wouldn't be any liberals to keep. Or rhinos.
What did you do last time to make this review?
We worked together, there were 4 of us. And we went door to door. We put signs everywhere. We just worked really hard at it. We just gotta find 4 more good guys. I mean, I'm standing up here, if I can get elected, probably half this room could. So, we just gotta find somebody who wants to do it and is conservative.
The short answer for Patty, though, is the Speaker of the House picks, and the President of the Senate picks. It's their decision entirely.
Wow.
And just so you know, in the House, Speaker Barlow saw the incoming freshmen and the conservatism. Generally speaking, everybody gets 2 committees in the House. Every freshman got 1 except for the Democrat freshman. And then, to do that, they didn't have enough people on their side, so people who were chairmen had to also be on other committees to spread them out. And people who are in leadership, who are generally never on a committee, had to be on committees.
Who's in line to become the next speaker?
Well, in line would be
If they got reelected next
would be
year?
Albert Summers, which would be horrible for the conservatives. He's worse than Eric Barlow.
He's worse than Eric.
He will make our lives miserable.
Can you explain the management committees? Or how, whatever they call them?
Leadership and Management Council?
Yep.
Oh, I love both those organizations. They're fantastic. As John was pointing out, leadership picks committees, they get together and they make decisions, they kind of talk about the bills we're gonna see, and then during the interim, Management Council was supposed to exist for one reason, to watch out for the health and welfare of the LSO. Make sure they got paid, make sure they got their
Tell them what LSO is.
Legislative Services Office.
So staff.
And what do they do?
They help us write bills.
They help the leadership write bills.
And
Oh,
they're-
John,
aren't
they help
all
us.
attorneys?
No, most of them are
That's
paralegals.
not- I'm not joking. They work against us.
I've had a bill I've been trying to get written for 5 months. It hasn't even surfaced out yet. You'll turn your bill in, you'll sit down, you'll work with some of the LSO people with it, and somehow it makes it into a few offices here and there, and if they don't like it, they'll slow roll it. Or they'll write it in a manner that isn't what you intended. We did, I'll give you an example of what can happen down there. We had a SAPA bill, or Second Amendment Protection Act bill. And I co-sponsored it. We turned it in, and then the process starts. Let's amend anything with teeth out of it. So, in other words, the bill ended up saying, if they come take your guns, the Wyoming AG will go fight for you to get them back. And that's basically all the bill said. And then all the conservatives that sponsored this bill didn't vote for it. And all the rhinos did. And they're looking at us like, how can you kill your own bill? Because it's terrible. So we run into a lot of things of that nature too.
Kind of like
Do
the
you have
voter
to have the
ID.
LSO write your bills? Can't you write them yourself?
We can.
But they still have to approve it.
Why?
They are unelected bureaucrats.
And then just
I'm sorry, but I ran a bill this last session for recall of all elected officials in the state of Wyoming.
Awesome.
And originally, I was trying to get it all the way up to our congressional representatives and senators. And they came back with a caveat that said that it was unconstitutional. So anybody that wanted to vote for it or co-sponsor it, they weren't going to touch it because LSO said it was unconstitutional. There was debate about whether you can recall Liz Cheney. It's never gone to the Supreme Court. But instead of pushing it like lawmakers should, and eventually maybe we'd take it to the Supreme Court and find out. Instead of that, they kill it by putting unconstitutional on there, and then I can't get any support.
Unelected bureaucrats.
Yes. So it's much like what Trump had to deal with bureaucrats. Sorry.
And the issue with the bills after you write them, you can go talk to other attorneys and we've done that with like Cassie Cravens and a few other people. So you take the bill in there and it goes to LSO, well, you have to have their willing cooperation. They number it, they follow it through the system, they make sure it gets to where it's supposed to get when it's supposed to get there. And if it's not their bill, they don't tend to have much interest in it. And everybody looks at what you submit. John is absolutely right about that. And if they don't like it, it tends to get watered down, it tends to get put in a drawer, or in my case, a very simple bill. In order to take federal funding, it has to be approved by the legislature, and only the legislature. Not the governor, not taking it to, John brought up Wyoming Business Council, or the SLID board. We might as well call them a laundromat, because that's all they do is launder federal funds. If you take and look at the CARES Act, $1.25 billion. I've been working on this for 7 months. I can only find $400 million that actually went out to businesses. We used a ton of that money to pay county staffs, city staffs. So while everybody who's not working in government is at home in their house, hunkered down, so's the government. They're just getting paychecks. Now, it's pretty simple. For me to pay an employee, I have to sell a can of soup. If I had that government money, yeah, I could send everybody home and pay them. And then it went to $15.
And you wouldn't have to sell the soup.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, but I thought it was simple. I tend to think everything's oversimple though. And a lot of times I'm wrong. They've made it quite complicated. But I think if you're going to take federal funds, the legislature approves it. I listened to a school board meeting with all the political drama they had in theater. And the board chair was hollering at the accountant, do we get money? Are there any strings attached? We're not part of Obamacare. We're part of all of it. I'm trying to think of the term I'm looking for. No child left behind. Help me out, John.
Talking about teaching.
Yeah, the
New math.
Common Core.
Common Core, thank you.
Critical race.
We signed up for that on June 16th, 2012. The pilot program was run in one of the elementary schools and one of the junior highs. By 2013, Common Core was in every school in Campbell County. and you got them announcing publicly that there's no strings attached, and then they started talking about lunch funding. That packet's about this thick. It is so directive, it's not even funny. It discusses the number of calories and types of calories each child can have at each age group. So we're assuming that every 7-year-old is exactly the same. Every 7-year-old needs the same amount of food or the same amount of calories. If that's not a string, I don't know what is. And I could digress into all 4 areas. I got a packet put together. I was hoping Carol would be here tonight so I could give it to her.
What are some of the other issues that may come up as bills during the budget session that you see out there?
There's not gonna be time for much.
I think it's all gonna be the committee bills, if you go look at those. And I would guess we'll get to half of them maybe. There's one big bill out there for what we're gonna do for autonomous cars and testing. We're literally on a freight train headed over a cliff with K through 12 spending, and we're arguing about insurance rates for autonomous vehicles that aren't even here yet. Which, by the way, they initially wanted $5 million of insurance on it.
I have an unrelated question, and if you don't want to comment, I understand, but many people are talking about the text messages locally that were released. And we have at least one senator that has been implicated in a shady deal.
I would love to talk about that.
I think we'd like to hear.
I'll stay extra time.
Yeah.
Evidently, our former mayor didn't really think much of me and a couple other people.
Oh, she called you a monkey.
And I'm a circus monkey. A degenerate. She can't believe that I walk around people in this fine town and breathe their air.
Oh, no. Oh, Lord.
And she said about 5 of us, when we were in her chambers, they need to fumigate it after we left. And one of us sat in her chair, so she demanded a new chair.
Yeah.
There's about 500-600 pages of stuff. And that's just the funny stuff that's in there. There are some serious allegations. And I'll tread lightly around that because they're elected officials right now. And I think it's going to come out, which is going to help. Because we have an election coming. And you can probably guess who they are. My email is troy@collinscom.net. TROY@CollinsCollinscom.net. If you would like a copy of it, I have it in zip files. And it's about 500 pages long. Oh, it's fun to read.
Is that the same one that was in the newspaper, Troy?
Yes.
Or more?
Way more.
Oh, way more, oh.
Okay, so is anything gonna be done? How do you bring, how,
We'll
if
give you criminal charges.
your investigation officials bring,
Uh,
how is that gonna be
Criminal
done?
charges?
There's 3 or 4 of us going through it right now. And if there's enough, we'll drive down to Cheyenne and we'll ask them to open an investigation and seriously think about charging them. Now, here's what's gonna happen with that, in my opinion. Do you remember the clothing store in town that would give you 20% off if you voted for the college?
What? The shoe store.
The shoe store.
Soulmates.
It was on Facebook. It was an advertisement. That went to the state, and the state said, you know what? Yeah, we might want to look into this, because it's illegal. And then it came to the county, And they said, well, we don't think there's enough evidence here.
Well, what's gonna happen to those commissioners too?
The new attorney
finish
that
one.
we have, prosecuting attorney said-
No, Mitch did. It was the former one.
There's so many branches.
So finish with what you were saying, taking it to Cheyenne and.
So we'll go to Cheyenne, if there's enough there, and it'll come back here, and it'll be thrust upon the county attorney. He'll have to decide. My opinion only, he likes his job,
Who is it?
Mitch Damsky. And he's not a bad person, but I don't think he's gonna delve into it. However, there are 600 pages of stuff that can be shared on Facebook and put in mailers.
All stuff envelopes.
Okay? So
I will too.
it's fortuitous how this is happening. It really is. And it's catching some pretty big players. I think they're gonna find themselves in the same seat Von Flatern was last time after he took the $19 million.
Can't we have another county investigate them?
Well, we tried that on another issue, and we sent it over to Weston, library stuff, and that guy said, oh, I'm not touching this. Some,
Driscoll was handing out. We need to send it.
Love you, Mandy.
you see me biting my tongue every time you say that name?
I want to hear the name.
What name?
What's the name?
You trying to shoot us tongue off or what?
Yeah. John hit the nail on the head too. I would agree with what John said wholeheartedly. He's trying to create a district that will help himself. And in the process, really kind of jack 2 other counties up in a bad way. But as I said, if we keep fighting, we got to find a quality candidate to run against said individual.
Well, does most of his voters come out of Weston or Sundance?
Crook.
Crook County?
He lives in Crook.
Well, Judy McCullough ran against us, and she was leading until the third party entered.
Well, that'll be the game. They'll get 3 or 4 candidates. And if you're an incumbent, what a great situation that is.
That's why they shot your legislation down.
I'm gonna get at least 33% of the vote next time, I believe. I think I'll get more, but if there's 3 or 4 other people in there and I can get 33%,
Well, we certainly don't want runoff elections.
Ogden admitted as he was defeated voting against that bill that every election he's had a third party opportunity.
I think we elected a governor with 33%, because there were so many people in the race.
Same with Cheney.
That's about what Hitler had. About 30% of the Germans voted for it.
He had some different tactics.
Very good.
Not a lot.
Going back on the current situation going on in Gillette, do you think that there will be some more resignations?
Well, there's been 2 so far.
Was very good.
Who's the second?
Deech, Reardon.
Yes! I started read his name over and over again, those things.
There's another one implicated pretty deep and heavy in there.
Uh-huh, is he gonna resign?
I don't think he will resign. I
I was
was,
thinking he was gonna run for Barlow's office.
I think he still thinks he can.
Yeah, he's a little self. What's the word I'm looking for?
Absorbed.
Entitled.
Inside,
I can
yeah.
get, I can get.
Just like
that.
the mayor thinks her poop doesn't stink, you know.
Yeah, without shame.
The rest of ours does.
John, take care. Thank you.
John, thank you.
Thank you.
I listened to a couple people kind of say that the stuff that came out about Shay may not have been true and they just put it in there. That's a stretch for me. It really is. I do like the term circus monkey.
With a bayonet.
There you go.
Could you just clarify what Shay did? Because I'm thinking it wasn't that bad, but they've really played it up because, you know, the mayor hated him. Every other phrase is about Shay.
There is some implications, and I haven't gotten that deep into it, that he may have helped a few construction companies get bids that they probably shouldn't have gotten.
But the rest of them were doing that and 10 times more.
Yeah, so that's why I really don't want to comment much on Shay because I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure either, but I do want to say this, that they were all doing things in executive sessions that shouldn't have been in executive session. And they were mad at him for disclosing things in those executive sessions that should have been disclosed anyway.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's, I don't know how much that plays a part or not.
That in itself is huge. Your county commission's guilty of it, and your city council's guilty of it. An executive session can be used for one reason and one reason only, and that's to discuss personnel matters. In other words, we're going to talk about Martha, who sits at this desk, and we probably need to punish her or relieve her. That's what executive sessions are for. They're not for discussing anything. In fact, the city councilman and the county commissioners cannot be alone together in a quorum.
They were.
So that means you have two county commissioners together. Once you get the third one in there, you're breaking the law. And 3 or 4 city councilmen, if you're discussing business not in an open public forum. That in itself is huge. It came out of those emails. And that's where we're going to start. And they tell me, oh, Troy, you guys do it in session all the time. No, we don't. In fact, a lot of us don't even like each other.
Can't imagine why.
So we show up to committee meetings, and that's on TV, anybody can come, anybody can talk, or we didn't pull the county commission trick. We don't want to hear from you. Just sit there and be quiet.
Is that legal to do, cut out public?
Unfortunately, it is.
Yeah, as long as you feel good on
Elections certainly.
did
Well,
that.
with Deed's
Resigning, they can maybe get it back on there.
Well, Dell's chairman, or chairman.
Have you guys been to the Republican Party meetings lately?
With the leadership that's there, you've got to be joking.
They're just gonna find another,
Exactly.
Just like Deed, yeah.
yeah,
exactly.
public to put in there.
Kind of fortuitous timing for them to get incumbents in there.
Well, they're not gonna be there long, so they're not gonna have that much. I don't even think half the town's gonna know who replaces Deej Reardon. So it's gonna be an open fair, or a free-for-all for an election. And we got some really good county commissioner candidates coming up. I wish we had some state level stuff like we do there.
You know people that are gonna be running in August?
I do.
Can you
I
tell us
think
who?
one of them's sitting right there.
What's his name?
Jason McGill. I think Jacob Dalby's gonna run.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple other that are talking about it. I think, does anybody in here know John Wayne?
I've heard of him.
I think he's gonna run again. Huh?
John Wayne, the actor? And city council.
So we got good city council guys. We need, well, let's see what happens with all the text messages and emails. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to go back to the beef issue here. I came from Washington State, where they had things set in places. I mean, I lived in Nevada and you get an apple cheaper than when I lived in Washington. We paid premium prices for produce and meat that was in Washington. What needs to change in Wyoming so we can have and support our ranchers? I mean, what is creating the problem with the FDA?
It's USDA,
Oh, USDA.
and they took charge of, put a death grip on the market with the inspection process.
Does that come from the book that was written 100 years ago?
So, if you think about this, if they control the little blue stamp, they control the slaughter plants and the packing plants.
Which controls people.
Yeah,
Which China owns.
we passed the Food Freedom Act, which kind of helps.
A little bit.
But-
Well, Frank just died of the, he was the big one that did it here at the farmer's market downtown.
I still don't know how he got away with that.
He waited for the law to pass.
But he had it on a shelf wrapped.
Milk?
Oh, I thought we were talking beef.
Well, he had beef in freezers.
Well, you just did it.
He just did it.
I don't think the USDA is gonna come in and worry about a little freezer section. You know, if it was a big store, maybe, but.
I'm not saying I've never cut a carcass or have cut a carcass. But it can be done.
I feel like the more that we can protect the livelihood in the state, it's just so important.
As I understand the law and read through it, and I've been working on it, it's complicated, but I think I can get a mobile slaughter plant now because of the Food Freedom Act.
Good idea.
And I think I can pull that mobile slaughter plant into Don's Supermarket's parking lot and cut and wrap meat out of that.
Good.
I just can't bring it through the back door.
Yeah, sell it out of it.
Kohler's does it.
I just had breakfast with Kohler the other day, and they were headed out to somebody's place with her.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about our food supply. I heard something disturbing the other night on Fox News. They had a woman who owned, I think it was Liberty Farms in Virginia, and she was concerned because they figure that the Chinese government, or their shell companies that are controlled by the communist government, they figure that they say that they're buying up American farmland, and they figure that they already own 200,000 acres of our farmland.
Yep.
And they've just bought the largest pork producer in the world. I believe that's headquartered in Virginia.
Yep. Smithfield Farms.
Smith?
They own 2/3 of the protein processing in this country.
China does?
We should have known that through the COVID when we were in the pandemic, because they had all the recalls. And that was the issue that people were saying, they're the ones that cut corners and put us in jeopardy and.
But Troy, I can buy a half a beef from a rancher around here, which I do every year. And it's taken to Buffalo and it's processed there, and I have to go get it and bring it back here.
Yes,
What the heck's the difference?
Not for resale.
it's not resale. You're paying them to process it. Let's say you bought the cow from
I
Ed,
paid for my half a cow.
Right here.
and then you have your cow,
Process it.
and I'm oversimplify this
So you're the
too.
middleman.
Yeah, you have half the
Got it.
cattle. You take it to the processing plant,
Well, they do it, so,
and they process it for you.
and I can.
Yeah, and it's a set fee for the processing and a negotiated price for the cow.
So there's a business we need right here in Gillette, right there, instead of sending it over.
Oh, I've been pushing for that so hard.
There's a brand new one in Sheridan, that we just got our cow out of.
And we need them, we need them.
I think anybody's interested in going into business with me, get a hold of me. I got a pretty good plan. The one thing I haven't solved, boy, am I way off topic, sorry. What do you do with the hide and, for lack of a better term, the guts? That's
There's
the-
people
Guts you
that buy
take
that
to the
stuff.
dump.
That's leather.
You sell the hide for
Ask
it.
the butcher and what they do with it.
Sell it on eBay.
They can't sell the hide anymore. By the time you go to all the work to separate it from the fat, it doesn't bring enough money to warrant selling, so they just throw it away.
You don't really want to have friends. Yeah, there you go.
But yeah,
That's what he does.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Changing the subject, do you know when the Campbell County caucus is going to be?
No. But the last time I found out about the Republican Party meeting, I had to go search the internet and almost come across it accidentally.
February
I don't
18th.
advertise.
February 18th?
February 18th.
I've been looking.
February 18th is the one at the
Probably
library?
At the
6
library?
o'clock at the library. I didn't get all the information.
Want to make sure that you guys are in legislation.
Y'all might find this hard to believe, but the Republican Party leadership right now, probably not my best friends either.
Well, they're all frontier. They're all frontier, they're not real Republicans.
In fact, one of them said, "I can't believe everybody's getting upset." I think we've all said that about all those people.
Are you talking about the state people or the county?
County.
The frontiers all got voted in.
Well-
Because they
Oh, I
got
know, I
the
just wanted to make sure that's
precinct
what we were
people.
talking about.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the term frontier is just propaganda, because when you say frontier, you think of pioneers.
Sure, why do you think they?
But these people don't deserve to be looked up on like pioneers.
Well, thank you for taking a few extra minutes with me tonight. Didn't mean to keep it going so long.
It's John's fault.
But everybody in here knows how to get a hold of me if you need to.
Can you do that, repeat?
The email address, it's troy@collinscom.net. It's Collins Communication.
So is it